morning, students. Today we continue with our theories related to narration in literature. Last classes we were discussing basically fabula, difference between fabula and juse. So these are the first basic distinction between literary narratives, fabula and juse. And then we discussed the theories proposed by Vladimir Prop, and then the theory proposed by A.J. Gramsci. It is the 6 actins model. Now we move to the next theory by Roland Barthes. He is famous for this idea or book titled Death of the Author. And here he is talking about this narrative codes, Roland Barthes and the narrative codes. He has written this work, The Structural Analysis of Narrative and S/Z, which came out in 1970, which introduces a detailed model of narrative. And his basic assumption is that all these literary narrative consist of signs or codes. It is all those words that produce characters and events. And he identified 561 units of meaning while reading a short story by Balzac, which he named as Lexius. And he again organized this Lexius into 5 main groups, which are called codes. These are the 5 codes which is common to all narratives according to Roland Barthes. One is Pro-Eretic Code. In second one it is Hermeneutic Code. I will erase that and write the correct one in my PPT. Hermeneutic Code. Third one, it is Cultural Code. Fourth, it is Semicode. And fifth is Symbolic Code. So the first one, it's Pro-Eretic Code. It is the sequence in which the events of a story unfold. So it is that sequence in which a story is told. And the sequence is like this happened and then this happened. So that is Pro-Eretic Code. And Hermeneutic Code is something which explains, something which informs the reader about the details. It informs our interpretations. It helps us to understand the answers to the questions like what happened, why, by whom. So you must remember these 2 codes, Pro-Eretic Code and Hermeneutic Code എന്ന് പറയുന്ന 2 കോഡുകൾ. These are the 2 ways of creating suspense in a narrative. ഒരു narrativeൽ suspense കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നത് ഈ 2 waysലാണ്. The first, Pro-Eretic Code, is caused by all those unanswered questions. This happened and then what? ഇത് നടന്നു ഇനി എന്ത് എന്നുള്ള ചോദ്യം. അതാണ് Pro-Eretic Code. The second, it is a kind of an anticipation of an action's resolution. എന്തോ ഒന്ന് നടന്നു ഇനി എന്ത് സംഭവിക്കും. So these are the terms, important terms, which was proposed by Roland Barthes, and it actually distinguishes between the 2 forces that drive the narrative, which takes the narrative forward. ഈ പറയുന്ന Pro-Eretic Codeും Hermeneutic Codeും ആണ് it takes the narrative forward. It is the Hermeneutic Code which refers to all those plot events that raise questions on the part of the reader or the viewer. If it is a film, it is the viewer. And it raises the questions on the part of the reader or the viewer. It is something which you see in a detective story. For example, ഒരു ഡിറ്റക്റ്റീവ് ഫിലിം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ഫിലിം പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അഞ്ചാം പാതിര എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സിനിമ, അതിൽ ഈ പറയുന്ന പ്രോയർട്ടിക് കോഡും ഉണ്ട്, ഹെർമന്യൂട്ടിക് കോഡും ഉണ്ട്. അതായത് ഇത് കഴിഞ്ഞു ഇനി എന്ത് എന്നുള്ള ചോദ്യം, ഇനി ഈ പറയുന്ന വാട്ട് ഹാപ്പൻഡ്, ഹൗ, വൈ, ബൈ ഹൂം എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്നു. സോ the narratives ties up all these loose ends produced by Proertic code and Hermeneutic code. As you see in dictative story, the entire narrative operates primarily by this Hermeneutic code. For example, ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ അഞ്ചാം പാതിര എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, ഈ പറയുന്ന മുഴുവൻ നറേറ്റീവും ഈ പറയുന്ന ത്രെഡിലാണ്, ഈ പറയുന്ന കോഡിലാണ് പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്നത്. We witness a murder and the rest of the narrative is devoted to determine the questions that is raised by the initial scene of violence. Take again the example of അഞ്ചാം പാതിര. ആദ്യം തന്നെ ഒരു കൊലപാതകം ഉണ്ടാകും, പിന്നെയുള്ള റെസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ദി നറേറ്റീവ് ഇതിൻ്റെ ആ ഓരോ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് റിസോൾവ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിലാണ്. Proertic code, on the other hand, refers to mere actions, those plot events that simply lead to yet other action. This happened and then what? This happened and this happened എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ആ ഒരു sequential order. For example, like a gunslinger draws his gun on his enemy and we wonder what will be the resolution of this action will be, what will be the climax of this action. We wait to see if he kills his opponent or he wounds himself, and suspense is created by action rather than by a reader's or a viewer's wish to have mysteries explained. അപ്പോൾ അതാണ് രണ്ടും തമ്മിലുള്ള ഡിഫറൻസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. പ്രോയർട്ടിക് കോഡിൽ സസ്പെൻസ് ഇസ് റിസോൾവ്ഡ് ബൈ ദി ആക്ഷൻ which is there in the narrative, while in hermeneutic code it is the key is with, or the real player is the reader or viewer. It is his wish to have mysteries explained, which actually operates within hermeneutic code. So that is Proertic code and hermeneutic code. And now next is cultural code. So these are all those elements of common knowledge that we share as a community. അത് നമുക്കറിയാം, we have a common history, common culture, common geography ആണെങ്കിൽ we understand this cultural codes easily. For example, in text there is this example given, like during vacations Raju went to his grandfather's farmhouse to celebrate the harvest festival. Here we understand, we are actually culturally informed about this farmhouse and harvest festival, which may not be familiar with a person from a different culture, from a different community. So that is cultural code. Now next is semic code. Semic code is something which draws upon a common set of stereotypes. Stereotypes, it generates some meaning. For example, a man in white clothes and wearing a Gandhi cap is a semicode that he represents certain ideology and it requires no explanation. We immediately know that he is a politician. അതാണ് semicode എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. It is something like generally accepted set of stereotype signs. ചില stereotype സയൻസ് ഇന്നതാണെങ്കിൽ ഇന്നത് എന്ന് നമുക്കത് ഊഹിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്, അതാണ് സെമിക്കോഡ്. അതിൻ്റെ തന്നെ ഒരു എക്സ്റ്റെൻഡഡ് വേർഷനാണ് യൂസിങ് ഇൻ സിംബോളിക് കോഡ്. ഇറ്റ് എക്സ്റ്റെൻഡ്സ് ബിയോണ്ട് ദാറ്റ് ഇമ്മീഡിയറ്റ് സ്റ്റീരിയോടൈപ്പ് ആൻഡ് റെഫേഴ്സ് ടു സംതിങ് ലാർജർ. For example, the association of night with evil and fear, sunlight with knowledge and happiness. So these are the common symbolic codes. Think of this work, of this film Dark Knight, where this symbolic codes are used extensively. And there is this another example given in the text. It is about Pader Panjali, where there is this use of strong wind and cosmic destruction, which is signified through rain, storm, We know that റെയിനും സ്റ്റോമും കാണുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾക്ക് തന്നെ മനസ്സിലാക്കും എന്തോ bad thing is going to happen. That is the death of Durga. And there is this beautiful scene where this Durga and his brother sees the train for the first time. അതും ഒരു സിംബോളിക് കോഡാണ്. ഇറ്റ് മേ റെപ്രസെൻറ്റ് their migration to the city afterwards. So that is symbolic code. So these are the 5 set of codes given out by Roland Barthes. These are the narrative codes discussed by Roland Barthes. Now we have the last one by Gerard. He discussed the 3 levels of narration. And he says that all narratives follow 3 levels of narration. That is histoire, recit, and narrating. Histoire, it is the set of narrative events that happened in the past and has to be narrated. It is, in simple words, it is just story. Or a story which contains all those set of real actions that happens and need to be told. That is the content of all narratives, and that is what we call as story. Histoire അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്റ്റോറി, അതായത് സെറ്റ് ഓഫ് narrative events, നേരത്തെ നടന്നതും ഇനി നടക്കാൻ പോകുന്നതും. Now next is recit. Recit is another term, it is narrative. Another term, it is text or narrative discourse. It is actually the storytelling. It can be either in oral form or written form, or it is the speech or writing of the storyteller through which the story comes into us, comes into a paper or come to the reader. ഏത് ഫോമിലാണോ ഈ പറയുന്ന സ്റ്റോറി ടെല്ലിംഗ്, അതിനെയാണ് റെസിറ്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഇറ്റ് ക്യാൻ ബി ഇൻ ഓറൽ ഫോം ഓർ റിട്ടൺ ഫോം. I made a mistake again. ഈ കൾച്ചറൽ കോഡ്സ് റോളണ്ട് ബാർത്തിൽ വരുന്നതാണ്. I will delete that. Next is narrating. Narrating is the larger process of recounting the novel as a whole that produces the recit. ഈ പറയുന്ന മുഴുവൻ നോവലിനെയും, ആ നോവൽ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് എ ലാർജർ പ്രോസസ് ഓഫ് റിക്കൗണ്ടിങ്, ഇത് റെസിറ്റിലൂടെ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. സോ നറേഷൻ ഇസ് ദി ആക്ട് ഓഫ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസിങ് ദ ടെക്സ്റ്റ് either by the speaker or the author. So these are the different levels of narration given out by Gerard. First, it is histoire or story. Recit, it is a storytelling. Narrating, it is narration of the whole story, the whole novel. For example, Abhijit Kundu talks about a particular one. It is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where there is this scientist quest for the secret of life. Then there is this creation of the monster, and later the monster's revenge on the scientist. That is the story or histoire. And the recit or text is the telling of the story in the novel as a whole. It is the telling of the story in the novel as a whole. And narration is what you see Walton and Frankenstein, the scientist, do inside the novel. That is narrating. These are the narrators who tell us the story. So we come to the end of the discussions on narration in literature. We will meet in the next class. We will discuss narration in philosophy and history. Thank you, girls. Have a nice day.